Okay, welcome to today's lesson. I found a nice program by a guy called Al Stewart called Boomerang, which I thought was really quite good and teaches a few nice concepts. Last week we looked at variables and how to move our characters around the screen. So this one's called Boomerang, and I'm just going to show you how it works. So what you have to do, you have to press the green flag, and then if you press the space bar, it will fire a boomerang. So I can now find and fire a boomerang, and it comes back to me. Now, if I'm not very good. I've only got 20 seconds, so not very good. And if I move my cat as well, then I might be able to move around. So it's quite a good game. You'll be much better at than me. So I'm just going to show you how you make it. So we're going to create a new program, and so here we go. Click on create. Now, obviously, we're going to use the cat. You could use any character you like, really, but I'm just going to shrink him down here by going to the size thing and maybe going to about 30, and see what that looks like. I might have him a little bit bigger than that. Okay, so I'm going to have that, and while I'm here, I'm going to rename him as cat. Okay, so that's one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to rename him cat. Okay, now there are a couple of variables that I'm going to need to have, so I might as well create them now. So I'm going to go down to the variables section here, and I'm going to need a variable called I'm going to need one called timer. So I'm going to create one called timer. Oh, I've got my caps lock on for some reason. So timer, and that's going to be for all sprites. And then I'm going to create another one called score. Okay, so I think the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a timer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the right here and go onto the stage. And what I want to do is I want to use my timer function. So the game's going to start when I click on the green flag. So if I go to this event section and when clicked, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to set the timer to a particular time. So let's go for setting the timer here. So we're going to set my variable block, change that to timer. I'm going to set that to 20. Okay. Now, what we then also need to do is we need to basically have a loop going. So we're going to use a repeat until loop. Okay, we're going to say repeat until the timer equals 20. Now, this doesn't have 20 seconds in it, it just has 20 in at the moment. So I'm going to go to control, and if I scroll down here, I've got a repeat until. And what we're going to do is in this box here, this lozenge here, we're going to put an operators block, and we're going to say something equals something. So repeat until timer equals 0. So I'm going to put a 0 in there, and then I go to the variables and I put that. Repeat until timer equals 0. So what I need to now do, this will loop until that is true, until the timer equals 0. So I need to make the time go down by 1. So I think what I'm going to need to do is going to have to wait 1 second and then go to variables, and I'm going to change my variable, my timer, by -1. Okay. So, and then once that's finished, so let's just try that out. 19, and you can see here it's counting down. That's brilliant. So if I go to my events, I think it is, it might be control, and I want to stop all. So once that's finished, I want the game to stop. Okay. So once I've done my timer, I've got that working. Now I need to do some work with the cat. Now I'm just going to rename him again because that's where I obviously caught onto the caps lock. So I'm going to call him cat. Now I need to be able to move my cat around the screen. Okay, so I need to be able to move him around the screen, and to do that I'm going to have to go to the cat sprite and look at the code, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to use an event. So I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, what am I going to want to happen? Well, I'm actually going to want to set the score to 0. So let's go to variables, and I'm going to set my score to 0. So when we start off, it's going to set to 0. Now I want to now move my cat around the screen. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a forever loop. Slightly different from how we did it last time, but that doesn't matter. It's a different way of doing it. So I'm going to use my forever loop. And what I'm going to say is I now need to use some events. I need to say if a particular key is pressed. So I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to use 4 of these, and if something then. Okay, so I'm going to have 4 of these for up, down, left and right. So I put those in like that. Now what I want to do is I want to say if key W, if we use WASD keys, if I use W and S for my up and down, so let's do that. If I go to events, sensing, what am I saying? I want to say, where is it? Key space press, so that's it here. So I want to change this to a W key for my up. In fact, I'm just going to put all of these in and then I'll sort it out. That'll be a bit quicker, I think. Okay, so there's my, so W, down is S, and I want my left to be an A key, so that should be up here. And I want my right key to be a D key, so there, I've got W, A, S and D. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the fact that if you look here, I've got an X and Y coordinate, so my X coordinates going that way, you can see it change, and my Y coordinates are going that way. So we're going to use the coordinate system to move our sprite around. So W and S are my up and down, so that's going to be a Y coordinate. So I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to change Y. I'm going to put 2 change Y's in there, but obviously W is positive, so that's up, S is down, so that's going to be a -10. Okay. Now my A and D keys, well that's the X direction, so I'm going to put my X direction in here and there. So my A is going to the left, so that is -10, and that one will be D. So now hopefully if I run this and click on the green flag, this moves up and down, wonderful, and that moves to there and there. Okay, so that's sort of okay, I think. Okay, so what you can do, sometimes it does get a bit confused, so there's something called set rotation style left and right. So I'm just going to put this in here to make sure that if he turns at all, he doesn't end up turning upside down. So let's hit the timer again. There. Okay. Now, one extra little thing that you can do is if you look at the costume for the cat, you can see that you can make him run. So what we're going to do is a nice little thing. We can use the next costume. So we're going to put a next costume in on each of these. There we go. And our next costume, oh, made a mistake there, just put that back in. Put this in here. Let's put that down to there, and another next costume. So what I should have now is press this, I should have my WASD, and you can see that he's running now. Okay, so you can see his moving around, which is just what we want. Okay, so we've made our cat and he can move around. Now we're obviously going to need a boomerang, so we're going to have to make our boomerang, I'm afraid. So we're going to go to choose a sprite and we're going to paint. I'm going to leave it in vector mode, so if it says convert to vector here, you'd need to click it. At the moment mine's in bitmap. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose, make this a black outline, like that. And I'm going to just have some things. I'm just going to draw what I hope to be a really sort of okay-ish boomerang. Yours will probably be a lot better. So I'm just going to, again, move up. So I'm just creating put a little curve in here, so just loads of little bits. And yours will be a lot better, I'm sure. And if you make sure that that all ties up, what you can then do is you can then fill it with a colour if you wanted to. So turn the saturation, come down here. Is it brightness here? I don't know, I could have one of those. Okay, so what I'm then going to do, you see this little crosshair here, I'm just going to have that like that. Now what we want to happen, obviously it's a bit big at the moment, so I'll just change the size to, I don't know, about 30 or something like that. That's a bit more like the size of boomerang we want. You can obviously decorate this a bit more, that's up to you. Now what I want to do is I want this to rotate, so what we're going to do is a little cheat. We're going to duplicate this, and then if you click on it you can see that there's a little rotation here, so I'm just going to move it a bit, and then I'm going to duplicate again, and I want to carry on doing that, just duplicating my previous one until I get it round to being back at the beginning again. So I'll just do this and move it, duplicate it and rotate it, duplicate it and rotate it. And now you might have about 10 or 12 of these by the looks of it. Depends how long you want to spend. And I'm just duplicating the previous one. Oops. And then just do that. Duplicate. I think I'm nearly there. I think I sort of had it about like that. Let's have a look at number 1 and just see what happens. Yeah, that's pretty much okay. So obviously I want to now check that that's going to work. So just as a quick check, what I can do is I can use a forever loop. And let's put this on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the next costume. So let me see where it is. Next costume, there it goes. And if I click on this, it should work. There it is. I don't know what was happening there, but you can see that it's going around quite nicely. So that is fine. Now, what I now need to start doing is I want the boomerang to go away from the cat, and like any good boomerang, it's got to then come back. So I'm going to go to my code section here, and I think what I need is I need to, first of all, we don't want to see it first off. So I want to basically hide it. Now I think I've got hide down here on this movement here, so hide. So I'm going to want to hide it, and obviously I want to hide it straight away. So I'm going to use when this is clicked, hide. Now we're going to need a variable, because what we want to do is for the boomerang to know whether it's been thrown or not. So we're going to use another variable. And I'm going to create a variable here called thrown. Okay, and I'm just going to make it for this sprite. Now while I'm here, I'm also going to make another one, because we're going to want to know how fast it's going. So we want the boomerang to go out, slow down, and then come back. So I'm just going to make this just for the boomerang sprite. So I've now got thrown and speed. Now what we need to do now is we need to set thrown to false because he hasn't thrown it, so it's false, it's not true. So we can now go to set my variable. Well, it's not my variable, we want it to be thrown, and we're going to change that to false. Okay, so that means whenever it's starts the game, it's set at false. Okay, now I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit so we can see the programming area. Now this is a slightly tricky bit, but if you follow it through, it does sort of make sense. So what I want to do is I want the when the space key is pressed, I want to throw the boomerang. Now I'm going to use an if statement here in the control book, and it's going to be an if-then statement. And what I'm going to say is, if thrown equals false, okay, then go to cat and do some things, okay. So I'm saying if thrown equals false. So I need to go to the operators block here and choose an equals. So I want to say, I'll type in here and type false, okay. And I'm going to say I want the variable thrown. So if thrown equals false, this is what I want to happen. Okay. So I want to go to the cat. So I want the boomerang wherever it is, wherever the cat is, I want the boomerang to go to the cat. So that means it's going to be a motion. And if I look here, I can go to random position, but I can actually choose the cat. Now what I want to do is, when I throw the boomerang, I want the boomerang to go where the mouse pointer is pointing. So where my mouse pointer is pointing, that's where I want it to go. So what I want to do is I want to point towards the mouse pointer. So I'm going to go to the blue motion bit here and grab it, go to the mouse pointer. Then we're ready to show. So I'm going to go to looks and then show. So, and what I want to also do is I want to set the speed to say 24. So I'm going to go to my variables here, and I'm going to set my variable. So this time it's the speed to 24. Okay. So this is now if thrown equals false, which it will be when the green flag is clear. Go to cat, point towards mouse pointer, show set speed to 24. Okay, so first of all, that is what it's going to do. Okay, now what I want to do is now go through here, and I'm going to want to throw it. Okay, so when the space key is pressed, then it's going to throw it. So what I want to do is I'm going to use a repeat until block. So here, I'm going to put this in here like this, and I want to say I want to repeat doing this until the speed has got to 0. So at the moment it's 24, so I want to say repeat until, so it equals 0. So change that to 0, and then go to my variables, and speed equals 0. So what I want it to then do is I want it to move speed steps, so 24 steps or 23 steps, whatever the speed is, I want it to move. So I'm going to go to motion, and then I'm going to say move, where is it? Move 10 steps. So I want this to move, I want it to be whatever's in the variable speed. So go to variables, and then go to speed. So you go, move speed steps. And once we've done that, I want it to get slower. So I'm going to change my speed by -1. So every single time it's going to get slower and slower and slower. And then obviously I want it to in effect spin. So I want to now use one of my costume blocks and go to the next costume. So this will repeat until the speed equals 0. So it will spin around until it's 0. Now once it's got to 0, I think I want it to wait just for a moment, and I want it to just spin for, I don't know, 5 times. Okay, so repeat 5 times, and I'm just going to have it putting in a next costume. So it's just going to spin there for 5 repetitions. Then what I want it to do is I want it to go back towards the cat. So I'm going to put a repeat until touching the cat. So I want to repeat until, I'm going to put this at the end like this, and then I want to go to sensing because I want it to repeat until touching cat. So here's touching mouse pointer, put that in, and I should have cat. Brilliant. So repeat until touching cat. Well, I don't want it to point towards the mouse pointer now, I want it to point towards the cat. So let's go and find our point towards. Here we go. Point towards cat. Okay. So we point towards cat, and then we're going to move these speed steps again. Now actually I wonder if I can just duplicate this. And let's go put that back in, because that's pretty much what I want to do. I want to put this in here, except I don't want this to be -1, I want it to be 1. Okay, so I want that to now change by 1 each time. So let's have a little look at that. Let's just make this a bit bigger and go in there. I'm going to point over there, and you can see he comes back. Okay, but the problem is the boomerang doesn't disappear. So what I need to do is the end of this block, so it's after it comes out of this instruction here, I want to set the looks to hide. Let's have a look. To hide. And at the beginning I said if thrown equals false, then you do this. Okay. Alright. So what I now need to do is just put it back to false. Okay. So let's do that, and I need to go to variables and set my variable to false, and that's thrown. So now what should happen if I click on this, put it over there, he comes back and he disappears. Okay, which is pretty cool, and I think that's wonderful. Okay, so we're nearly there. We've got quite a good, nice little program that's working. If I move around a bit, okay, my timer's probably going to run out now. Okay, I just can't move him around until I reset the green flag. Okay, so that's working. Now I need some targets for him to throw his boomerang at. Okay, so what I want to do is make sure that my apples here get hit. Okay, and let's have a look at how I'm going to do that. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to create myself a new sprite. Okay, and that means I'm just going to find one, I think. An apple seems like a perfectly good thing to do. Now it's a bit big, so let's do that. Make him it's about the size of his head, so I think that's sort of okay. So what we want to do is we want this apple to appear at different positions. Now I hope you can see here we've got an X and Y, and actually the X over here is about -230. I think it goes up to about -240 and about 230, 240 here. Yeah, it's about 240. And then the Y goes up to about 180-ish and -180. So what we're going to use is that same idea that we used last time with the catcher game, is we're going to go to a particular coordinate. So let's put in when the green flag's clicked, and then we want to go to an XY position. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pick a random number, just like we did last time, between two different values. So my X, we just worked out, was -240, and this was 240, and we said the Y was going to here. The Y is going to be somewhere between -180 and 180.5. positive. Okay, now I'm going to need another one of these, so I'm just going to duplicate it and use it later. Okay, so what we're going to need to do is to have these blocks appearing, okay, and disappearing. So what we want to happen is, you know, if it's touching the boomerang, then we want to change its position and maybe increase the score by 1. Okay, so we're going to use a forever loop. We're going to go a forever, and so we're going to go here and forever if something then. So if touching boomerang, so we go to sensing. You can see here if touching mouse pointer, put that in there, and we've got if touching. Oh no, I called it apple. No, I want to. Oh, I haven't renamed this as a boomerang. I'm just going to do that because or else I will get very confused. So let's call that boomerang. Okay, so if that's a boomerang, so I need to go to my apple. Now I should be able to see boomerang. So it's always a good idea to name your sprites. Once it touches the boomerang, well obviously we want to increase the score by 1. So I want to go to a variable. We're going to change score by 1. And then we want it to go to a new random position. Okay, so let's give this a go. Let's go to here. So there's my boomerang. Let's see whether it works. My apple, it's moved. Right, and you can see now that I can move it across really quite quickly, and I can get my boomerang to score loads and loads of points. Okay, so that's working. So we're nearly there. So I think now we've got that working, the quickest thing to do is, let's say, have another few apples. So let's just duplicate this. Duplicate that again. Now you can see here, let's just try that out. Let's just boomerang it. Okay, got ones there. Now if I move as well, then check that works. And obviously I can move whilst, and the boomerang will then come to me. Okay, so I might be able to hit a couple of other apples on the way back if I'm really clever. Now you can see here that we've got these variables here. I don't think I need the boomerang thrown and the boomerang speed at the moment. So if I go to boomerang and I don't want thrown, so unclick this one here, and I don't want speed. Now hopefully if I press the green flag, I've got a really quite cool game. Oh, apart from I was really rubbish there. And see, I moved for that. There. And you can see that I'm getting a bit better. And obviously you can see the idea. So I scored 9. I'm sure you can do a lot better. So what was the trickiest bit? I guess the trickiest part of this was possibly this part here, because it is making it go out and come back. So make sure you follow that. It's really easy to have this still left at my variable. So just check which one it is that you need, the variable that you need. And hopefully you'll have fun making this nice boomerang game. So enjoy, and I will be in the lesson with you, giving you a hand. Okay.